is very small, then assumption is correct that we may assume that the stress is uniformly distributed along the thickness direction. But if the width is larger or it is significant, then this assumption is correct. So, but anyhow, for the thin walled section, for example, the open section or the I section, channel section, or any other type of the hollow section, we can use the concept of shear flow. So what is shear flow? If we multiply the shear stress with the thickness of the section, so we will have this formula which is VQ over I, so which is the force distributed in the element per unit length. So we have converted the our distributed stress into the load acting per unit length. So shear stresses does not occur in a beam subjected to pure bending. So I will not discuss in detail because I believe that I have already discussed. So if you will have any question at the end, so I will explain it. Okay, just explaining the topic of the complementary stress. So complementary stress, that actually we have studied the topic of the uh, concept of the horizontal shear stresses, the stress component which are acting along the length of the beam. And then I told you that if we are taking a small differential element at the corner, so we have proved that whenever a horizontal shear stress is acting in the longitudinal direction, at the same time there are some vertical stress which are acting in the vertical direction or in the perpendicular or the transversal direction. And this vertical stress having the magnitude same as of horizontal shear stress, but they they are acting in the normal direction, and this stress component are referred as a complementary stresses. It means that for each stress component acting in the horizontal direction, there is a one balancing stress component which is acting in the vertical direction, and it's referred as a complementary stress. So there is a further proof that why the horizontal shear stress having the same magnitude as of the vertical shear stress component. So for example, in the top diagram, tau component, you can assume that tau component is the stress which is acting in the horizontal direction or along the length of the beam, and tau bar is the stress component which is acting in the vertical direction. Or you can assume the x in the longitudinal direction and tau y in the vertical direction. As you know that we are having the equilibrium equation, so it means that to use the equilibrium equation we need to convert the stress into the force. So tau x multiplied by the area over which it is acting. For example, you can assume this direction is the dz and this direction is the dx. So we can multiply the stress component with the area, so we can convert into the force. Similarly, tau y multiplied by the area over which it is acting, we can convert into the force. And for example, if we are taking the movement about any point, for example, at this corner 0, so these two forces are passing through this point, so they are producing no movement. So tau y is producing the movement in clockwise direction, and it will have the movement arm dx, and tau x produce the movement in counterclockwise direction, and it will have the component dy. And from here all these three components will be cancelled out, so it means that tau x will be equal to tau y. So here we have concluded that whenever horizontal shear stress is acting at any point, the same point is also subjected to the vertical or the transversal shear stress, which are referred as a complementary stress. And further, please note that how we can get the direction. So if one corner, either the both corner, we will have the tail of the stress component, or at any corner we may have the head of the any corner. So actually last time we have also derived one expression, and we have computed that the maximum shear stresses are produced along the neutral axis. And when we derive the expression, we have come up with the expression that the maximum shear stresses are 3 by 2 or 1.5 times of the V over A. It means that this equation, shear stress equation, is overestimating the stress by 50%. And what is the reason? Because the thickness of the section is significantly larger, and our assumption is wrong. What is the assumption? That the stresses are uniformly distributed along the width or the thickness of the dimension, which is not correct. So we will discuss in our forthcoming slide also. And here you can see that some failure in the wooden beam. You can see that the cracks are produced along the neutral axis, and these are the shear cracks. And why they are producing along the neutral axis? Because these cracks are primarily due to the applied shear stresses, which are maximum along the neutral axis. There might be one question, because I told you that whenever the horizontal shear stresses are produced along the length, thus at the same point we are also having the stress acting in the transversal direction. So why the cracks are not produced in vertical direction? Because beam is weak along longitudinal direction, but it is strong in shear in transversal direction. So shear strength is less along the fiber direction. So that's why the cracks produce along the weaker plane. So here I will just briefly explain, because we have already discussed in our theory classes in detail. So actually this parabolic profile is the actual distribution of the horizontal shear stress along the width. And here we are assuming that the B is equal to 2 times of the height of the section. So actually the stresses are maximum at the edges and the stresses are lesser in the center, because the interior elements are more confined. So actually we assume the uniform distribution of this stress. Uniform distribution means this straight line, and a difference between this curved line and this straight line is the overestimation, or overestimation which is equal to 50% of the stress. So that's why the shear stress equation is predicting the or overestimate the stress by 50%. But if the thickness becomes very small, then actual stress distribution may be considered as a uniform. So applied stress will be equal to V over A, instead 3 by 2. So the research indicate that if the width of the section is less than h by 4 or 25% of the height, then the stress may be assumed uniformly distributed along the thickness. It means that if the stress is 100 megapascal at this edge, it will be remain 100 throughout this width. So taking the advantage of this small thickness, we may use the concept of shear flow, because if the stress is uniformly distributed along the thickness direction, so it means that it is only varying or changing along the length. So it is better to study the concept of shear flow or force acting per unit length. It means that if I multiply the stress with the thickness, so stress Newton per millimeter square multiplied by millimeter, so I can convert into the shear flow. So that's why for the thin walled section or the steel section, instead of using the concept of shear stress, we may use the concept of shear flow. Please hold on for any question. If you are having any questions, so I will take up all your questions at the end of session. So you may write down your question in the chat box. Further, we had another assumption. I told you that shear formula is only applicable if the vertical sides are parallel to the applied force. For example, at this section, if I draw the tangent to this side, so at this side, for example here, so this vertical component will exactly be the perpendicular to the horizontal shear stress. But at any other portion where the sides are not perpendicular to the vertical force, so our element will not be the perfectly vertical, rather it will be inclined. In that case, we will have the two components which is acting perpendicular to this line and parallel to this line. So actually this component will not be equal to this component, rather it will be equal to the component of this force, which is lesser. So if you will have the question at the end, I will explain in detail. But in other words, the shear formula accurately predict these stresses if the vertical sides are parallel to the applied force. Otherwise, it will overestimate the stress. Overestimate will be on the safer side. It means that the fracture stress will be 80 megapascal, so equation will give the 100 megapascal, so our design will be safe. Okay, further, whenever a beam is subjected to the shear stresses, in that case our plane section will not be remain plane. For example, you can see this first diagram before deformation. Whenever there will be horizontal shear stresses, there will always be warping. Why there is always warping? Because you know that horizontal shear stresses, they are varying parabolically. It means that the element near to the neutral axis are subjected to the larger shear stresses, and the elements which are closer to the extreme edges, they are subjected to the lesser shear stresses. It means that their complementary stress component at any layer will also have a different magnitude. But however, if you will sum up the magnitude of all the vertical or the complementary stress, that will be equal to V. It means that the vertical shear stress or the vertical shear force along the cross section is not having the same magnitude. It means that all the elements along the cross section, they will deform with the different magnitude because they are subjected to the different magnitude of the stress. So that's why they will always be warping. So warping will only be zero if member is subjected to pure bending. Pure bending means that without any shear stresses. Further, I also told you that horizontal shear stresses are maximum along the neutral axis. But in some case, this may not be correct because the formula is VQ over IB. So wherever the thickness is smallest, the stress may be maximum. So I will just pass out, I will just quickly pass this slide because I believe that we have already discussed this derivation in detail. So regarding the characteristics of the shear flow. So I told you that for the thin wall section, instead of using the concept of the shear stress, we are using the concept of shear flow. Why we are using the analogy of the shear flow? So this word comes from the flow, just like the water flow. It means that water always flow in one direction. It always originated from the one side and it is being consumed from the other side. It means that in the same way, we can perceive the direction of the shear flow from the one part of the section to the other part, that I will explain in the next slide. So why we are using the concept of shear flow? Because we are assuming that the shear flow is uniformly distributed along the thickness and only varying or moving along the length of the element. So shear flow, very first point, shear flow in the part of the element parallel to the resisting shear is always in the direction to resisting shear force or opposite to the applied shear. Actually here you can use the two concepts. If a cantilever beam that you will see in the next slide subjected to the downward force P, if I will cut this section, then the resisting shear force will be in upward direction. This means that shear flow will always be opposite to the applied P. But if you are studying in the concept of the resisting shear, so it will have the same direction as of V. But direction doesn't matter, only magnitude is matter. So your answer will always be unaffected or it will not be changed. So you can assume any direction. I will explain in the next slide. So second point is that shear flow occur in one direction through the thin wall of the open section. So it is always flow in one direction. So there will be no any contradiction of the direction. So at any junction, for example, at any junction, the incoming flow will be equal to the outgoing flow. For example, if we are having the junction, whatever the flow is coming at the junction or at any bank, the flow going from that joint will be equal to the incoming flow. The value of shear flow will always be zero at free end tips, and it will be maximum along the neutral axis. If just you recall the formula of the shear flow, which is VQ over I, or VQ is equal to VA Y over I. So A is the partial area, which is either above the layer or below the layer under consideration. At the free end tip, no area is available on the one side. If area is zero, so shear flow will be zero. I will explain in the next slides also. So shear flow is assumed to be generated from the one side of the neutral axis, and it is assumed. Okay, here T is missing, so I will modify here. It is assumed to be absorbed at the other end. So shear flow is directly proportional to the static moment of the area, which is AY. And for the actually, there are three things. Number one is the direction of the shear flow. Number two is the distribution of the shear flow. And number three is the direction of the force diagram. So actually, when we are dealing with the problem, we are having three things: direction of the shear flow, within the element distribution of the shear flow, and the force diagram. So for any section, we are having two elements. For example, we are having the flange and we are having the web. So assuming that applied force is acting, or the resisting shear is acting downward. So one part is perpendicular to the applied and other is the parallel to the applied force. So these flanges, these are perpendicular to the applied force. So the part which are perpendicular to the applied force, distribution of the shear flow will be linear, and the part which is parallel to the applied force, the distribution will be parabolic, and that I will explain through the derivation in the upcoming lecture, in the upcoming slides. So further, the point number 10 will be explained also in the next slide. The part which is contributing the moment of insignificant contribution to the moment of inertia will assume to be have zero shear flow. Okay, here if you will see that at this junction, so shear flow is coming from this one tip and also from the other tip. So this shear flow at will be from the one side will be QF, and from the other side will be QF. So at this junction, there are two flanges, they are meeting and they are converting into the one web. So it means that at the junction, total shear flow will be 2 times of the QF, and in the web, outgoing flow will also be 2 times of the QF, because incoming flow at the joint two pipes, they are coming and they are converting into the two pipes. So 2 times of QF is being accumulated, and the total flow in the web will be 2 times of the QF at the junction. Okay, first of all, let's suppose we are having a Z section. In the Z section, I am assuming that resisting shear force is acting in the downward direction. So we are having the web. This web is parallel to the resisting shear. So always try to sketch the shear flow direction in the portion which is parallel to the applied force. So I'm sketching the direction. So this arrow indicates the direction of the flow in the web, which is parallel to the applied force. Okay, here, if you know the direction of the flow in the web, and by using the analogy of shear flow, it means that flow is always unidirectional, and you can perceive the direction of the flow in the top flange and also in the bottom flange, because keeping the flow consistent with the web, flow must be in the right direction on the top flange and also in the bottom flange. It means that flow is being generated at the free end tip and it is being consumed on the other end tip of the neutral axis. Similarly, we are having the doubly symmetric I section. I will have the flow direction in the web because this is parallel to the resisting shear force. If you know the shear flow in the web, by using the analogy of the shear flow, you may perceive the direction of the shear flow in the flanges. So it will be like this in the top flange, and in the bottom flange it will be going outward direction, because total shear flow coming at the junction is equal to total shear flow outgoing. So here the flow is dispersing into the two flow. Similarly, we are having the T section. So this part which is parallel to the applied force having downward, and then from the junction flow is being dispersed into two parts equally, which must be inconsistent with the flow direction. Okay, now I'm having the head section. So here I'm having the two portions of this section which are parallel to the applied force. So in that case, the shear flow on the both web will be in the downward direction. And actually in this case, there will be no shear flow in the web or in this horizontal portion. Why? Because this portion lies along the center line. So moment of inertia of this portion about its own centroid is very small, because moment of inertia is bt cube divided by 12. If the thickness is very small, so cubic of thickness will also be very small, so we can ignore this. So this was the point number 10. The contribution of this portion is insignificant. So here applied force, the shear force is equally distributed in the portion. Okay, if you are having the a rotated channel section, in that case sketch the shear flow here. So but in that case the shear flow will not be zero here, because centroidal axis will be somewhere here. So moment of inertia of this horizontal part will be zero about its own centroid, but when you transfer the moment of inertia of this part from its centroid to the centroidal axis, it will be significant. Okay, here is the one question you may have. So flow is being assumed to be generated at the free end tips, which is correct here. But actually it must be consumed at the free end tip, but this is not the free end tips. In that case, you can use another concept. Flow is either originated or consumed at free end tips or at axis of symmetry. So this section is symmetrical about this vertical axis, so flow is being consumed at axis of symmetry. So here I will explain further in detail. So here you will have the example of this T section. So here if you will have the flow direction in the vertical major portion, because here you are having the three portions which are parallel to the applied force. Always try to sketch in the major vertical portion. So if the direction is downward, then by using the analogy, you may have the flow direction in all the components. Okay, please here you will observe that in the major or in the largest web flow is downward, but in the small projected portion of this flange, although they are vertical, but the flow is upward. It may not be downward because we have to perceive the direction of shear flow, which must be unidirectional. Similarly, in this circular case, I told you that shear flow is always passing through the center line of the element. Regardless that the element is the circular, it is perfectly vertical, or it is the angular, just like this the triangular section. Okay, here if you, for example, if I take this component, it will have two components, which one is acting in horizontal direction and one in vertical direction. So the horizontal component of this component will be balanced by the horizontal component of the shear flow on the other side. But if you sum up the vertical component of all the shear flow along the depth, that will be equal to V. Similarly here, this section is not having any free end tip, but this section is symmetric about this vertical axis. So just sketch the axis of symmetry and assume that one portion is eliminated. When one portion is eliminated, this axis of the point at axis of symmetry may be assumed as a free end tip, and this is also free end tip. So flow is generated from the free end tip and it is consumed at the other free end tip. Just like this, I have already explained the example of this rotated eye section. Just consider the example of this hollow section. Hollow rectangular section, force is acting in downward direction. Sketch the axis of symmetry parallel to the resisting shear force, and then you will see that the flow is acting downward in the portion which are parallel to the applied force, and then flow is originated from the axis of symmetry from the one side of neutral axis, and it is being consumed. So there is a duplication of this slide again. Assume that half section is removed. So if half section is removed, it only becomes the channel section, so which is having free end tip over here and free end tip over here. And flow is originated from the free end tip and also consumed at the free end tip on the other side of the neutral axis. So if a section is not having any free end tip, then the flow will generate from the axis of symmetry and it will consume at the axis of symmetry on the other side of neutral axis. Okay, next is that let's suppose we are having a singly symmetric section. Singly symmetric section is the channel section, and in that case we are having the two axes. One will be the axis of symmetry and other will not be the axis of symmetry. In the first case, I'm assuming that the load is acting, applied load, in such a way that it is passing through the axis of symmetry, just like I have shown in the cross section. In that case, I have just sketched the axis of symmetry and load is passing through the axis of symmetry. And I have also shown the neutral axis over here. So if I want to show the direction of the shear flow, so first of all, this is the applied force. This is not the resisting shear force. So resisting shear flow in the web will be upward. If you want to show in the downward direction, it will not make any difference. So it means that flow is being generated from the free end tip. And axis of symmetry is this one. So it means that just use the analogy of shear flow and the flow is being consumed at this axis of symmetry. So here you will plot the direction of the shear flow. So this is the direction of shear flow. Next is the distribution of the shear flow. So here you will see that you can assume this is the half portion only. Half portion means that one angle on the one side and one angle on the other side. Just sketch the distribution of the shear flow on the one direction and other side will be the mirror image. So this portion, I'm just assuming the half. Shear flow will be 0 at this axis of symmetry and this free end tip. And the shear flow distributes linearly on the element which is perpendicular to the applied force. So this flange or this portion is the perpendicular to the applied force. So the shear flow will be 0 and it will increase linearly and it will be maximum at this junction. Why? Because the shear flow formula is V AY over I. So area at this axis of symmetry on the one side is equal to 0. And when we are moving toward this junction, so area is increasing. Although the moment arm of area with reference to the neutral axis will be remain same. So only width is increasing, so that's why the shear flow distribution will be the linear. Then next I told you that shear flow at this junction, incoming shear flow will be same as of outgoing flow. So the shear flow with reference to the flange will be this magnitude. And the same magnitude will be with reference to this web, because whatever is the flow coming here, same will be the flow which is outgoing. So if I will sketch the shear flow distribution, so that will be this one which is given over here. So this shear flow at this junction will have the same magnitude as of the shear flow at the junction with reference to the flange. Shear flow is 0 here also at the tip of this vertical web on the other side of neutral axis. And here the shear flow, it will be maximum along the neutral axis. So this parabolic distribution indicates that the shear flow varies parabolically on the element which is parallel to the applied force. Why? Because when the area is increasing, both height is increasing and the moment arm, both they are changing. So we will see in our in derivation. Okay, next is that we are having two things here. One is the direction of the shear flow and other is the distribution of the shear flow. We can convert this shear flow diagram into the force diagram. You know that shear flow is equal to force acting per unit length. So every shear flow, if it is multiplied with the length over which it is acting, we can convert into the force. Similarly, every shear flow which is acting on this web multiplied by the length of the web, we can convert into the force diagram, which you will see in this slide. Okay, in this slide, just this left diagram, this is the P force which is acting in the downward direction. So this is the vertical force which is acting in the web. And how you may compute this force? And this is a force which is acting in the horizontal direction. So this vertical force is computed by multiplying the average shear flow in the web multiplied by the height of the web. And each force is denoted by V, and this will be equal to P by 2. So this magnitude will be equal to P by 2 on the one side and P by 2 on the other side. So if you will add both, so total V2V will be equal to P, which will maintain the equilibrium. And similarly, this horizontal force, you can compute QF average shear flow multiplied by the B by 2. B by 2 is the half of the width of the flange. So this H and this H both will have the same magnitude, but they are cancelling the effect of each other because they are acting in the opposite direction. So it means that if I will sketch the net diagram, so net diagram will be this. So only these two components which are having the magnitude P by 2, they will balance this P force, and this H force on the one side and horizontal force on the other side, they will cancel the effect of each other. So it means that the section is subjected to the net force in the vertical direction. So there will not be any twisting. So section will either bend in upward direction or in the downward direction because it is perfectly in equilibrium. Or anyhow, if you are taking the moment of the forces, summation of moment about this point equal to 0. So this P force and both horizontal forces, they are passing through this point, so the moment will be 0. This force V, it will produce the moment about this centered in counterclockwise direction, and this V force will produce the moment about this center point in clockwise direction. So moment produced by the vertical force on the one side will be equal to the moment on the other side. So our section will be perfectly in moment equilibrium. So next point is that, however, if the load is perpendicular to the axis of symmetry or any axis other than parallel to the plane of symmetry to the center, then the beam will bend along with twisting. Okay, I will explain this point in the next slide because it will be difficult to explain at this point. So just understand that what is the symmetrical bending or the uniaxial bending if the load is passing through the principal axis or it is acting parallel to the principal axis. So here I am adding one word, parallel to the principal axis. So there will be only unidirectional bending, symmetrical bending without any twisting. Okay, I will come back this definition of the shear center later. First, I will discuss that why there is a need to study the concept of the shear center. Okay, now I would like to discuss the second case. Now, if I will rotate the section to the 90 degree, in this case, now the load P is acting perpendicular to the axis of symmetry, regardless that load is passing through the centroidal axis, but there will be twisting. Although the load is acting through the principal axis, because in case of the symmetrical section, either singly or doubly symmetric centroidal axis, they are the principal axis. So why the load is acting or passing through the principal axis and it is not producing the symmetrical bending? Why it is twisting? So we have to study this in detail. This means that we must know the concept of the shear center that I will explain here. Okay, in this diagram you will see that we are having the centroidal axis. One centroidal axis which is horizontal, it is the axis of symmetry, but the load is passing through the centroidal axis which is perpendicular to the axis of symmetry. Okay, just draw the direction of the shear flow. Shear flow in the part which is parallel to the applied force will have the opposite direction. Similarly, you can perceive the direction in the flange, which will be QF. Okay, if you want to convert into the force diagram, so average shear flow that I have explained in the previous slide, so average shear flow in the web multiplied by the height of the web, this will be the vertical force. And similarly, we will have the horizontal force, which is average shear flow in the flange multiplied by the width of the flange. Please here small h is equal to distance between the center of the top flange to the center of the bottom flange, and b is equal to the distance from the center of the web to the tip of the flange. Okay, here in this case, let's suppose if I ask you to take the moment, or if I want to apply the equilibrium equation. So if I will apply summation fx is equal to 0. So this force, horizontal force in the top flange, having the same magnitude as of the horizontal force in the bottom flange. Both are having the same magnitude, but they are in opposite direction, so they will cancel the effect of each other. So horizontal equilibrium will prevail. Similarly, if you apply the vertical equilibrium equation summation Fy is equal to 0, so this P will be equal to this V force. So equilibrium will be maintained in the vertical direction. But if I want to check the rotational equilibrium, just take the moment equal to 0 about the centroid. So this P force is passing through the centroid, so it will not produce any moment. Okay, this couple, these are the force. What is a couple? Two forces having same magnitude but acting in opposite direction and displaced by a certain distance. So moment produced by a couple is computed by any one force multiplied the distance between them. So this moment will be equal to h multiplied by b as capital H small multiplied by small h. So this will produce the moment in clockwise direction. And further this v, it is also having some movement arm from the center of the web to the centroidal location. So this is also producing the movement in clockwise direction. It means that this section is subjected to the net clockwise movement. It means that this will twist in the clockwise direction as indicated in this diagram on the top left diagram. It means that even though the load is passing through the principal axis, but due to the horizontal shear stress or due to the shear flow which is produced in the flange and the web, the section is twisting in the clockwise direction. So here, how we can avoid this? This can only be avoided if we are applying the force P in such a way that it must counter the clockwise movement produced by the V force and H force. It means that if the H and the V, they are producing the movement in clockwise direction, so P must be acting at a point in such a way that it must produce the movement in counterclockwise direction but having the same magnitude. And this P must be parallel to the actual line of the action. So for example, here you can use the equation summation m not equal to 0. So in this case, for example, I assume that the P load is acting at a point O, which is displaced by a distance P from the center of the web. Here you can take the summation of the moment about point O equal to 0, or I will suggest to take the moment about the center of the web equal to 0. Both will have the same answer, it will not affect the solution. But here, for example, in the given solution, I have taken the moment about point O equal to 0. So it means that this V is passing through this, this P is passing through this point O, it will produce 0 moment. So this V is having the moment arm E with reference to point O, so this is producing the movement in counterclockwise direction, and movement will be equal to V into E. So this movement is in the counterclockwise direction, I have written on the left side, and the movement which is on the right hand side I have written above, which is H dot H. So H dot H is the movement produced by this couple, so which is obtained H, one horizontal force multiplied by the distance between the couple, which is H, and this movement is in the clockwise direction. And from here we can determine the E. So E will be equal to the H, capital H multiplied by the small h over V. So it means that E is the distance from the center of the web, and this E is the distance that we can determine numerically. And if we are applying the load at a distance E, so in that case the rotational equilibrium will also be satisfied, and we can achieve the symmetrical bending without twisting. So here this point O is the point which is referred as a shear center. Why it is called shear center? Because this point is the function of the shear forces, horizontal shear forces and the vertical shear forces which are produced within this section. Now this is the point in such a way that this point may be inside the section or may be outside the section, just like in this case. If the load is passing through this point, there will only be the bending without twisting. Bending may either be in horizontal direction, maybe in vertical direction, or maybe in any inclined direction, but obviously there will be no any rotation. So this point is called as a shear center. Okay, next question arises that how we can apply the load outside this section. Just to facilitate this thing, we can weld a plate at the edge of the edge and we can apply the load just like is shown in the diagram, or we can weld a rod from at this edge and apply the load at the tip of the rod. In that case, if the load is acting at this point, so there will only be the bending in vertical direction without twisting. So this point O is referred as a shear center. So this problem only occurs in a singly symmetric section when the load is acting perpendicular to the axis of symmetry. If the load is passing through the axis of symmetry, we will not have any issue regarding the twisting of this section. Now I am coming back to the previous slide. So shear center. Shear center is the point in or outside the cross section of the beam through which the plane of the loading must pass. Plane of loading means that load is passing through the shear center. It may be in vertical direction, it may be horizontal, or it may be inclined. So there will be only bending without twisting. Okay, above point is very important. Shear equation cannot be used to calculate the shear stresses, as this equation is derived for a member with vertical plane of axial symmetry. Actually, he says that in this equation, if the cross section is, if the sides are not parallel to the applied forces, then shear formula overestimate the stress. So shear formula is only applicable if the axis of symmetry are parallel to the applied forces. All type of the section which undergo the bending, pure bending or ordinary bending, are subjected to the shear stresses. This stress creates the internal shear force whose resultant must be equal, opposite and collinear to the external shear force, otherwise the bending occur along with twisting. This thing I have explained in this force diagram. So these are horizontal and vertical forces. These are the forces which are produced due to the applied forces. So doubly symmetric section or singly symmetric section where the load is applied parallel to the plane of symmetry, we will not have any problem or issue regarding the twisting. So again, I am repeating, shear center is only important for a singly symmetric section if the load is not acting along the axis of symmetry. If the load is acting at any other axis except the symmetrical axis. Okay, let me discuss the case of the doubly symmetric section. In a doubly symmetric section, just like the I section, P is the downward force, resisting shear force in the web will be upward, and you can also get the direction in the plane by using the concept of the shear flow. The flow must be unidirectional. It means the flow is coming from downward and is being consumed in the upper side of the neutral axis. And here you can convert the shear flow diagram into the force diagram by multiplying the average shear flow with the length of the member. How we obtain this? In the next session, we will solve some problem. So I will explain in detail while solving the question. Similarly, H1, H2 force, you can give even any name. They can be computed by multiplying the average shear flow in the flange multiplied by the length of the flange. And again, if you are taking the moment equal to 0 about this junction, so this H2, H1, P and V are passing, so they will produce 0 moment. And similarly, okay, here, assume the moment about this junction equal to 0. So H1 is producing the moment in clockwise direction and H2 in counterclockwise direction. Both will have same magnitude but acting in the opposite direction, so which will cancel their effect. This means that there will be no twisting. So all the equilibrium equation will satisfy. Moment equation, the force equation in the x direction, and the force equation in the vertical direction. Here we will discuss the derivation of the shear center for a channel section. Let us assume that we are having any cantilever being subjected to the downward force, and assume the channel section which is having the flange dimension b and height of the web is equal to h. And h is the distance between the center of the flange, and b is equal to the free end tip to the center of the web. First of all, we may compute the stress in the flange or the shear flow in the flange. So assume any area in the web. So I am assuming any differential area in the web. So assume that the thickness is uniform. Thickness of the flange and the web is same. So I am assuming a differential area in the flange, and area will be equal to T into VZ.
Actually,
T
इसमें पता तो नहीं चलता कौन रिमूव कर रहा है.
If there is any, please don't make noise, gentlemen.
रिमूव कौन कर रहा है? पता चलता है.
Do you want me to explain again?
रिमूव कौन कर रहा है? पक्की बात है. लड़का कहता है ब्रेक चाहिए, मैं रिमूव कर रही हूँ.
Okay, gentlemen, please, if you have any issue, please write down in the comment. I will take your question at the end, gentlemen. I will take your question, okay? Mohit, I have seen your question, but I will answer at the end. Maybe I will make suitable diagram to explain this also. Okay, let's come back to the lecture slide. Okay, first of all, I want to compute the horizontal shear stress or shear flow. Here you can use any concept, either the concept of shear stress or shear flow. So if you are having the shear flow, you will not have this T in the denominator. So formula is equal to V over IB into Q Y into dA, differential area. So here I have written this expression in the integral form. Here dA is a differential area of this area, and Z is the distance which is increasing from the free end tip to the center of the web. And Y bar is the movement arm of this area, which is equal to the distance from the center of this area to the neutral axis, which is equal to h by 2. And differential area is equal to T into dV. If I will take the integral, so integral of dz will be equal to the z. Okay, next is that if I want to determine the stress at the free end tip, so z is equal to 0 because t is starting from here. If I substitute the z value equal to 0, this means that the shear stress at the free end tip is r equal to 0, which is also proved. This means that the shear stress is r or shear flow is 0 at the free end tip. Why? Because no area is available on the one side, which is the right side of this there. But if I want to determine the stress at the junction where z is equal to b, so which will be equal to VHB over IT. Okay, if you see this expression z is the having the power 1 single degree function. It means that when the Z is increasing from 0 to B, so stress will be increasing linearly because it's a single degree function of the Z. And also this element is perpendicular to the applied force, which is also proved that the part which is perpendicular to the applied force, the distribution of the shear flow will be linear, and this will be VHB over AG. And further, you can convert this shear stress into force if you multiply this shear stress with the area of this flange, or if it is shear flow, you can multiply the with the length of the flange. Again, I will explain in detail when we are solving the numerical in our next session. So this force I told you that you can compute by multiplying the average stress in the flange multiplied by the area of the flange. So what is this? Here the stresses are VHB over 2I, and here the stresses are 0. So average will be this stress plus 0 divided by 2 multiplied by B into T is the area of this flange. So we are having this H force which is acting in the flange. Okay, similarly stress in the web. I told you that total shear flow coming at the junction must be equal to total shear flow outgoing the junction, or shear flow must be increasing when more area is being added up. This means that if I want to compute the shear flow in the web, just compute the shear flow in the web, add the shear flow that you have already computed in the flag into that expression. Okay, here I'm assuming a differential area in the web, and this area is having the height dy and thickness equal to t, and y is the distance which is starting from the junction to the neutral axis. Y will be 0 at the junction, and it will be maximum at the neutral axis, which will be h by 2. So shear flow in the web will be equal to shear flow at junction plus area which is being added up in the web. So here which is equal to V over IB or IT into the integral form, which is the differential area into the moment arm of the area. dA is equal to T into dy, and moment arm will be equal to, for example here, distance from this junction to this center is h by 2, and this distance from this center of this area to here will be equal to h by 2 minus this y. I have written over here. After simplifying, we are having this expression. This is the contribution of the flange, and this is the contribution of the web. So if I substitute the y value equal to 0, y will be equal to 0 at junction. So at junction, if I put the y is equal to 0, so this complete factor will be 0. It means that shear stress at the junction will be equal to the shear stress at the junction with reference to the flange, which is the proof that shear flow coming at the junction must be equal to the shear flow outgoing the junction. So this, if I draw a straight line throughout the length of the web, so that indicate the contribution of the flange which is remain constant, and this parabolic grade is showing the increase of the shear flow which is contributed by the web. If I substitute the y value equal to h by 2 in this expression, so we will have this solution. So again, I told you that you can multiply this average shear flow in the web, multiply with the area of the web, you will have the vertical force. To obtain this, you can subdivide this profile into two parts. One will be rectangular and other will be this parabolic. So parabolic, if you are parabolic, you can convert this parabola into the rectangular by multiplying it 2 by 3, because it's a second degree function. So I believe that I explained in the class session, but I will explain while solving the question again. So this tau maximum is the shear flow contributed by flange plus shear flow contributed by the or the shear stress contributed by the web, multiply by 2 by 3 to convert into the average. But anyhow, at the end we will have this expression V. This is equal to total V force. So this is the force diagram that we will obtain. H is the horizontal force in the flange, V is the vertical force in the web, and P is the downward force. So if we will apply the equilibrium equation, summation Fx is equal to 0. So horizontal force in the top flange must be balanced by the horizontal force in the bottom flange. If I will apply the summation Fy equal to 0, P will be balanced by the V. And for the moment equation, so we have to apply the force P at certain distance to ensure that there will not be any twisting. So let's suppose in the first top case there will always be twisting. Just to avoid this, we have to apply the force at a certain distance from the centroidal line, so that the moment produced by the H couple must be same as of P. So which is the unknown distance E. So V into E, I'm taking the moment equal to 0 about this point O. V into E is the moment produced by the vertical force in counterclockwise direction, and H in capital H into small h is the moment produced by the horizontal couple in the clockwise direction. So from here we know the V value, we know the H value, capital H, and we know the small h. Only unknown is E. So from E, if you substitute the value of V from here and H value from this diagram, and if you will simplify, you will have this expression. Okay, in this expression, E is equal to H square B square T over 4I. If you will see that all these are the geometric dimension, there is no any force involved. This means that shear center is only the function of geometric properties, and it will be remain constant for any cross section, and it is independent of the applied force. Okay, please note that this expression E is only valid for channel section. This will not be applicable for any other type of this section. H square B square T over 4I is only applicable for this type of the channel section. For any other type of the section, you have to determine the location numerically yourself. So there are some characteristics of the shear center. Shear center always lies along the axis of symmetry. If two axes of symmetry exist, then shear center is the intersection of these two axes. So okay, here in the I section, we are having two axes of symmetry. So where the both axes of symmetry intersect, that will be shear center. It means that if you are applying, if the loading plane is passing through this point, there will only be the symmetrical bending without the twisting. And similarly, here we are having the third point. If center line of all the elements of the section intersect at one point, that point will be the shear center. This T section is having two elements. One is the flange and one is the web. If you sketch the center line of the both elements intersect here. So this will be the shear center. And also please note that this shear center is also lying along the axis of symmetry. In angle section, you probably remember that when we were solving the problem of the unsymmetrical bending, so we did not apply the load passing through the centroid, rather it was acting at this center. And I told you that I will explain in the shear center topic. Why we are applying this? Because here the center line of the both section, they are meeting at one point. So this is the shear center. If the loading plane is passing through this point, so this axis is the parallel to the principal axis. It means that we have to revise the definition of the symmetrical bending. What is the definition of symmetrical bending? If the load is acting through the principal axis or acting parallel to the principal axis. Here in the Y section, center line of all the section, they are meeting at one point. So this will be the shear center. And in case of the Z section, shear center will be the centroidal location. Okay, the location of shear center is only the function of the geometric properties or geometry of the cross section and does not depend upon the applied load. And the last point, the member will also be free of twisting. Okay, here the load which is acting at the shear center may not be vertical or horizontal. It may be inclined to the shear center. Only the point is that loading, if the loading plane is passing through the shear center, there will always be the symmetrical bending without any twisting. For example, here there is an inclined load which is passing through the shear center. You can convert into two components, one vertical and one horizontal. And you will see that both components, they are passing to the shear center, and this component TZ, it is acting through the one principal axis, and TY is parallel to the other principal axis. So both loads are parallel or passing through the principal axis, so they will produce this symmetrical bending, and there will be no twisting because the both load, they are acting or passing through the shear center. So regardless, that load is inclined. Okay, here I will end up my lecture over here. So I will take a couple of the questions, and next time in the next session I will update the next class on calendar MS Team, and we will solve some numerical, and after that I will give you some assignment. Okay, at this time, if you are having any question, please write down in the chat box, so I will answer the one by one. So first of all, there was the one question by Muhammad Moit, and his question is that, sir, we weld a rod or plate to avoid shear center, then is there a chance of shear in that plate or no? There will be no chance because you have seen the force diagram. Because engineer always think, he always consider the force diagram, because if all the equilibrium equation they are satisfied, so there will not be any twisting, there will not be any issue. So yes, Ahmad Al Azam. So I will definitely explain the formula in detail, because today it was the very first lecture. So I will also take your suggestion how I can improve it, and maybe next time I will also provide you the lecture, a recorded lecture also. So maybe I will make my PowerPoint more interactive, and I will show all the formula how to use the any equation, and how to determine the stresses, take the average of the stresses. Okay. So I will also share the recording